So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to this seminar series, the last one from this year, but be sure that we will continue during 2022, and we will inform you about new events that will come from the Discovery EELISA community. This time we have the presence of Professor Dr. Fatih Terzi. He's a faculty member in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at Istanbul Technical University, E2. E2 is one of the universities of the EELISA Alliance, and Fatih basically is one of the former members of this discovery community. So he's been involved since the very beginning. And he worked in the areas on sustainable urban development and strategy planning, basically on eco-cities and smart cities, okay? He has a very big experience in practice of urban planning and design, one of the focus of Discovery, as you know, no? I mean, he's been working in a lot of projects and consultancy activities in the municipalities and the administration office, European projects, working on the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization in the fields of planning, environmental planning, land use plans, and urban generation projects, basically. And he's a co-leader in the medium-term development planning of financing several Turkish cities under the World Bank Sustainable Cities Program. I would say that from one side, I must thank we all need to thank Fatih for being here. It's been involved since the very beginning, as I already told you, and took time to schedule such a nice presentation. But on the top of all of this presentation, he's a really nice guy and has many things to present to us. So thank you very much, Fatih, for being here. And Fatih, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me for this series of lecture, and this is the final one. And just let me start the presentations first. All right. Today I am going to talk about the basic components of sustainable urban form, and my intention here is to provide basic insights into the topic of sustainable urban concept. In the presentations, I will first try to explain why sustainable urban form is important in the context of global resource consumption trends and how urbanization is associated with that. Then I will continue with the discussions of urban form in the context of sustainable urban development. And then I will briefly try to explain the design factors, urban design factors, that is critical for reducing negative consequences of urban development pattern. You know, one of the important things today's agenda for sustainability is that without urgent action, rapid urbanizations is going to create pressures on the environment. From 2015 to 2060s, considering main life support systems like air threatened by greenhouse gas emissions expected to increase by almost 40%, agricultural land is also expected to increase more than 20%, mainly due to the deforestations, and also the forest is expected to reduce by 10%. And other natural resources like habitat or water resources also is under threatened. Of course, cities are not solely responsible for the consumption of natural resources and the pressures on these resources on a global scale. The urban form also has a significant contributions to this. Cities offer unique opportunities to reduce fossil fuel use through managing energy and the materials across homes, business, infrastructure in the cities. Therefore, global cities are key areas to focus on for reducing global carbon emissions in meeting the goals of Paris Climate Agreement. And it is reported that cities account for more than 70% of man-made fossil fuel carbon emissions. So, up to now, I can wrap up the problems related to cities by two groups. In the first group, it focuses on how can city form reduce the land consumptions, reduce the land conversions for building up purposes. In the second group, focuses on how urban forms this time can be designed to reduce carbon emissions. One of the main attempts in practical exercise tries to decrease the energy demands originating from the cities. Therefore, let's focus on the greenhouse distributions by industries. When we look at the sectoral distributions of greenhouse gas emissions, it's seen that the rate originating from the cities is approximately 30%. When you look at the energy used in the buildings, as well as the transport and some of them, it makes almost 1/3 energy consumption. So cities have an opportunities to reduce the negative externalities, environment externalities, at least by reducing the energy use and changing the travel behavior and transportations, travel demand and travel behaviors. When the problem is global, the fight against the sustainable development should be done in a global and organized manner. Based on this attempt, United Nations, has defined 17 goals in 2015, projecting the 2030s. The importance of urban form for sustainability is addressed directly in Sustainable Development Goal 11 goals, called Sustainable Cities and Communities. This aims to promote inclusive and sustainable urbanization, minimize the adverse per capita environmental impact of cities, and finally provide universal access to accessible green and public spaces. Here we can get two important things. The first one, minimizing the negative environmental impact of cities, and the second one, providing green spaces, which is important, especially mitigating the climate change's effects. The urban form is highly determinative in the interactions with natural structure. For example, think about cities that expand more in the land, more than their population, which accelerates the consumption of natural areas. And urban development pattern directly affects environment by replacing natural areas and damages or destroys many of these ecosystem functions and services. And also urban form may causes habitat loss, degradations, and fragmentation that severely reduce biodiversity. And generally urban sprawl type of development blamed for those negative consequences. Another issue here, urban form directly affects the environment by stimulating travel behavior that affect air pollutant and greenhouse gas emissions. Both urban sprawl form and urban compact form may cause these problems. So, considering all type of urban development, I can categorize all type of developments into two classes that emerge depending on the planning policies, of course. And these are urban sprawl and compact form. Urban sprawl, generally characterized as dispersed, scattered form, continued low-density suburban development, and dominated by car dependency and road transportation. In contrast to urban sprawl, compact development encourages high density development with creating walkable environment with associated investments in public transportation. The discussion about limitations, urban sprawl, and promoting compact city became an important issue of environmental agenda in advanced economies, such as Europe and USA, as well as developing countries. I want to show you some pictures to better explain the urban sprawl pattern. I can start with single family house development, which large gardens and generally car dominating street pattern. And also scholars blame urban sprawl providing only one single uses, mostly residential, which is far away, creating mixed use urban pattern. Some characteristics of urban sprawls may create very isolated neighborhood. It's not problem only for converting agricultural land for the building purposes. It is also the problem creating isolated social groups, which badly affects the social ties, create kind of social fragmentation. In some form, may create different communities leaving the spaces between them, which inefficiently uses the land. Some form create regular and geometric form, some of them irregular. And many of these features associated with urban sprawl characters create a kind of cities called limitless cities. And also the scattered patterns of the urban sprawl create an efficient way of using the land. And this kind of development resulted in impervious surfaces, which affects badly hydrological cycles, create urban heat island effects, and also create a kind of unfavorable macroclimatic conditions. But when you start increasing the density together with the urban image identity, you may create increase the vitality of the cities, creating walkable communities, as well as promoting the mass transit through the cities. Even high density make that kind of effects to cities, but the question here, does it have to be so high? So it's actually mainly the issues between arranging the density between low density and high density. When you look at the historical development of sprawl literature and go back to earlier studies, Gottman identified the characteristics of sprawl as conversion of agricultural land to the urban areas, expanding towards the peripheries. Later, Ewing identified 4 characteristics of sprawl form, like low density, scattered development, street development, and leapfrog development. Refers to any kind of development leaving the spaces between the main cities. And Brookman also highlights the scattered development problems, but Douani and his colleagues adds more to characterize urban sprawl pattern by adding the fragmented social groups in different spaces. In contrast, the urban sprawl compact form is associated with densification, intensification, and consolidations, and also it allows reuse of the existing built-up areas and bringing populations back to the urban centers. And also compact form provide more opportunities, creating favorable investment conditions for the mass transportations and provide more cost-effective infrastructure services. But compact cities is not perfect solutions. it has also negative consequences, and I can group them to 5. The first one, traffic, as it was stated that compact form encourages mass transit, but some studies show that the compact form doesn't doesn't reduce the traffic in the central areas, just reduces it in the rest of the cities. And another issue, the compact and mixed use is better for accessibility to facilities, but it only encourages walking for the light food shopping trips, but it is not effective for bulk food shopping and commuting. For the social aspect, compact development is blamed for affecting neighborhood relationships badly. Since people live in crowded areas and the houses is so close to each other and crowded streets, shopping centers, and etc., it creates a kind of social tensions. For the environmental quality, compact development doesn't have good environment quality since it has problems providing open spaces. For the air pollution from transport is higher in urban sprawl, but exposure per capita is greater in compact form because people concentrated on some part of the cities, and the bad air quality is exposed to more people, and people exposed more compared to the in sprawling pattern. In addition, considering the macroclimatic problems are common in compact form. For example, negative effects of heat island are felt more in the compact form. And final remark, remember that the COVID-19 pandemic, the viruses is transmitted faster in high density areas during the pandemic process. So instead of trying to search a good form, scholars try to identify the key features of sustainable urban form, like sustainable transportations, density, mixed land use, diversity, climate sensitive design, and finally, greening. Now I am going to focus on each of the key features. For the transportation component, I can say that it's important for providing sustainable urban form, and the policymakers have seen the manipulations of urban form as a tool to reduce travel demand. And the basic question here, how urban form affects people's travel behavior? The main idea here is to minimize the length of the trips and maximize the use of sustainable means of transport, mainly mass transit. But when you look at the pictures on the right, urban spatial structure affects the travel pattern. Since the population density affects the city size, both vertical and horizontal, it indirectly affects the accessibility to public facilities and the work to home trips. It closely related to travel pattern and affects the travel behavior. And some studies showed that overly controlled planning regimes like Moscow encourage compact form, because in that kind of cities, the new development limits and all the efforts forces to the determined area, and so the public transportations become more feasible and people tend to use mass transit instead of using the private car. For the design perspectives, more environmental and pedestrian-friendly neighborhood by the design strategies such as connected street layout, more mixed use, high enough densities, and traffic calming are the key elements for the transportations. Walking, bicycling, and other environmental friendly modes of transportation, mainly called active mode, are thought to be more convenient with the distance between activities if the distance between the activities is smaller. And Newman and Kinworthy focus on the car dependency. This is very old studies, but illustrates the relationships between the densities and the gasoline consumptions per capita. They analyzed 37 cities around the world and found that density is still the dominant explanatory variable for the level of energy used in transport. And they conclude that some policies can save significant amounts of energy, mainly by increasing the urban density, strengthening the city center. And they found they found that there is an inherent conflict between lower densities and a good transport systems, where lower densities, as expected, encourage car use. And similar message from Ecotex from the United Kingdom government, and they suggest that the higher densities are associated with less travel. And the table shows a neat inverse correlations between total distance traveled per peak and population density. So as you follow, enabling mass transit is closely related to population density. And then let's talk about the density. Actually, density is the result of two opposite forces, population density I was talking about. The first one is the force of attraction, which is the result of human desire to be close to other human beings to receive benefit. So if I ask what kind of benefit we can say, I mean, what kind of benefit people expect to be close to be each other? This could be like social help, social supports, friendship, being close to urban amenities, urban facilities, providing cheaper infrastructure. So all kind of benefits actually encourages increasing the density. The second opposite force is the force of repulsion in contrast to attraction. So in that case, people actually want to stay away from others to prevent any harm, like noise, pollution, lack of privacy, losing personal territory, intellectual concentrations, and maybe to be close to the natural environment to benefit air quality, to benefit easy access to green spaces. But in wider sense, sustainable urban form is a matter of density because there is no ideal density, but there is a consequences of the density. And I classified the consequences of the density into three categories: biological and physiological, generally in favor of low density. Economic consequences is generally in favor of high density. So if any city provides high density, actually it creates a favorable conditions for the economic development. As for the sociological benefit, it's actually is in between the low density and high density. So we can call it the moderate density. So considering the biological effects, think about a city's busy sidewalks, subways, buses, trains, office buildings, all serve as hubs for the transmissions of bacteria, viruses, and other disease-causing agents. And for the psychological, think about the long lines at store, cafes, restaurants, train terminals, all contribute, traffic congestion, all contribute to such stress, as well as high level of noise, high levels of traffic. So those actually commonly believed to have link to the illness. Also, the fear of crime and feelings of confinement, claustrophobia due to the predominance of towering buildings in densely populated areas may also be contributing factors. So the other design factor is mixed land use and diversity. Those two factors generally confused with, but there is a slight differences between them. I can say that the housing and work areas, as well as other compatible uses, should be closely related in time and space to promote walkable environment. And Jane Jacobs actually is the one who popularized the diversity dimension, subsequently adopted and widely accepted by many planning approaches such as new urbanism, smart growth, and sustainable development. And the diversity here rests on the fact that in cities, so many people are close together and among them contain so many different tastes and skills. And lack of diversity resulted in lack of public street life, fear of the streets, lack of commercial choice, and cultural interest. And based on those findings, 5 conditions are required for density. So enable multifunctionality. Most blocks must be short to create connected street layout. And the most importantly, I think retail trade, cultural facilities, and entertainment are the key issues, especially small enterprises, for creating vitality. And the other design factor to promote sustainable urban development is microclimate sensitive design. The passive solar design is one of the indicators that helps to reduce energy demands in cities. For Owen's design, density, orientation, layout, and vegetation can make the optimum use of solar gain and microclimatic conditions to minimize the need for space heating and cooling of buildings by conventional energy resources. Pictures on the left show the idea behind this design is to minimize the impact of summer heat to your home. This can be achieved by orienting your home and landscape in a way that it can receive the cool breeze by minimizing the barriers which hinder the air paths for natural ventilations and providing cross ventilations. On the right, passive solar heating depends on an integrated design approach that positions the majority of glazing and the most frequently used rooms on the southerly side of the houses. Another important parameters providing favorable microclimate environment is we call urban canyon and street canyon, which is closely related to urban heat island effect. Urban heat island is a factor affecting microclimate and air quality of cities. It also leads an increase in emissions due to the energy consumption and has an indirect effect on air quality. An urban canyon is described specific geometry of the buildings, which plays a crucial role in the energy balance, because the canyon surfaces are important and it's characterized by a high ratio between the height and width between the buildings. And those ratio, height and width ratio, traps the solar radiations and increase in temperature, especially during the night when the absorbed heat released back to the atmosphere. So for the building design to influence building heat gains and losses, albedo, which is the features of the reflectance of the materials and the thermal capacity of external surfaces are the main design elements. Another important design elements is vegetations and the water bodies, which has proven that it has a crucial role cooling process on buildings and open spaces. In saying the vegetations and water bodies, let's talk about the final design factors, greening the cities. And as you know, green space plays an important role in maintenance of biodiversity, enhancement of the distinctive range of urban habitats. It also has an effect of reducing pollution, moderating the extreme climate events, and moderate macroclimate conditions, providing favorable urban spaces for the thermal comfort. And there are some elements like rain gardens designed to treat polluted stormwater runoff, whereas bioswales are channels designed to concentrate and convey stormwater runoff while removing debris and pollutions. And also there could be some design element like rain water tanks for collecting and maintaining harvested rainwater. So all those elements actually should be designed in a holistic way to provide the city's blue and green infrastructures. For the final remarks, I can provide three densities: low, medium, high densities, and compare the advantages and disadvantages. Remember the consequences of the densities, like biological, sociological, and economical consequences. Low density generally in favor of biological process, like providing renewable energy, rainwater and greywater systems, food production in gardens, providing kind of urban agricultural opportunities, and of course promotes the high biodiversity. Whereas in low density cities has poor land utilizations, infrastructure cost high, and high transport energy cost and high building energy cost unless renewables used. Whereas when you focus on the high density environment, providing community greywater systems still possible, energy efficiency, and supporting mixed-use development, which is important for providing urban vitality, as well as the creating a walkable environment. Most journeys in high density on foot, bicycle, and public transport, providing good urban design and good macroclimate. In contrast, there could be a poor urban form, crime and vandalism, antisocial behavior, and low tranquility, and cost can be high per unit if you exceed the 60 houses per hectare. And final words. So there is no single urban form. Instead, there are tools to make cities more sustainable. And since the density affects many factors, it should be studied well. In sustainable urban mobility, active mode should be prioritized, and public transportation should be at the forefront in urban policies. In recent trends, considering the climate change and its severe effects, microclimate factors and helps to protect the city's biodiversity and ecological values become more and more important. And finally, sustainability performance can be enhanced through a range of planning and design strategies from building scale to regional scale. Thank you very much. I think I am up to time, and I'm happy to answer your questions if you have.
because maybe to be conscious is one of the first or one of the main reasons, not reasons, is the what can help for these kind of technologies and ideas to be real. Are we the people concerned about this problem? And more, if we go a bit further, do we know these solutions? Because we know that the cities are a problem because of air quality and many other problems. But I think that no one tell us that we have this solution, this solution. I don't know if you know what I mean.
I mean, yes, there is no actually right answer or a series of solutions for the whole problems. Once we start to consider for example, air pollutions, we need to start to think about how to reduce energy and how to reduce fossil fuels. So to provide solutions, the renewable energies and integrated approaches and combined heat and cooling systems is proposed as a solutions. And also the reducing the car dependency, increasing the mass transit is the actually very basic solutions for the air quality I'm talking about. But also there should be some considerations not preventing, for example, prevailing wind, so providing natural ventilations. So all the actually decisions related to cities itself, from building to regional scales, should consider from the regional scales, for example, providing wind, ensuring this city pattern takes the proper wind to provide natural circulations. So those are the actually enabling approach. On the other side, we need to mitigate the design the strategies that mitigate the problems, like reducing fossil fuels and providing renewable energies. But on the other hand, when you try to solve these problems, like minimizing the length of trips, requires you to put the all people on neighborhoods and design self-sufficient cities. But in metropolitan cities, the social structure is so complicated. There is high level and high skills people and low level income and low skills people. When you put those in an isolated structure to minimize the home to work trip, you created another problems like social inequality. So actually one problems cannot be the solution. Maybe can be the solutions for air quality, but when you try to solve the air quality problems, you may create a different problems. So it's actually needs to be a more holistic approach and ensuring and mitigating strategies together. It's not easy, what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. Yeah. Nuria asks, what examples of cities can we study to understand sustainable urban forms?
What examples of cities can we study to understand? Yes, sustainable urban forms, as I said, for most of the American cities is a bad example, given as a bad example for providing sprawling development. And I already mentioned their negative consequences. So in the seminars, I explained that there is no ideal urban form. Instead, you may establish some measurement performance indicators to measure the city's positive and negative effects to the negative effects on environmental sustainable indicators. Some European cities, for example, consider some Paris, London, even Barcelona, actually provide a good example, providing vital and walkable and integrated mass transit cities. So in my experiences and the knowledge, those cities actually is in between the sprawling and high compact, considering the East Asian cities, high compact cities. So they actually provide a kind of optimum densities, which is socially acceptable. So those cities, you can consider those cities as a good example for compact cities. Do you really think that these examples you have shown us could be applied in cities, like, for example, in suburbs, without real space or a very big remodeling? Yeah, right. In metropolitan cities, there are different characteristics in terms of the neighborhoods and the sub-region, let's say. When you consider the historical part of the cities and the tools and the strategies should be different. You can't apply, for example, solar design, passive solar design, or blue and green infrastructure for that kind of cities, because it has their historical requirements. Or not you cannot, but it's hard to implement some of the design factors that I explained, like passive solar design or blue and green infrastructure. For in the suburban areas or at the peripheries, at least some solar design, creating favorable climatic conditions, using proper urban geometry, I think possible to apply in an integrated manner to the existing cities. In my exercise in the presentations, I actually tried to show you some city of pictures to picturize what is urban sprawl, what kind of cities can be characterized and sprawl. And in the final picture was from the Hong Kong. It is also the very high, very extreme point of the compact. So it's actually right opposite picture of the cities, very low density and very high density. So the study is what I come to is propose the optimum cities, but there is no proper scale in vertical and horizontal. It is recommended to apply. I gave you 6 to 7 design strategies to increase the sustainability performance of the cities. There is no stereotypes model that is applicable for all cities. I don't know if I can answer the questions.
So thank you. I think, yeah, so that's okay. You answered the question. So I think we can close the lecture now. And so I want to thank you a lot, Fatih, for your presentation. I think.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
It was very interesting to end up with this presentation, because we've seen like very different technologies applied to cities, and so it was a kind of a way to sum up a bit and see how you could just combine everything to reach maybe a sustainable urban form. So thank you.
Thank you so much to Fatih and to all.
Thank you.